Marcus Johnson had been a security guard for 30 years. He'd worked at shopping malls, hospitals, apartment complexes, and now for the past 5 years at the Pinnacle Tower, a 30-story office building in downtown Seattle, housing tech companies, law firms, and financial services. The overnight shift suited Marcus. It was quiet, predictable, and gave him time to think. Most nights were uneventful, making rounds, monitoring the dozens of CCTV cameras positioned throughout the building, checking doors, occasionally escorting a late-working employee to their car. Tonight started like any other. Marcus settled into the security office at 11 p.m., relieving the evening shift guard. He began his routine, checking all camera feeds, reviewing the sign-in log, making notes of which floors still had people working late. The building was mostly empty. A few lights on the 15th floor where a law firm was working on a big case, a cleaner on the 23rd floor, the IT department on the 12th floor, with someone fixing servers. Marcus sipped his coffee and watched the monitors. 36 camera feeds displayed on the wall of screens in front of him, cycling through different views every few seconds. Lobby, parking garage, stairwells, elevator banks, hallways on every floor. Nothing unusual, just another Tuesday night. But then, around 1:30 a.m., something caught Marcus's eye. On camera 27, the hallway on the 18th floor, a door opened. The executive offices of Whitmore Financial Services. Marcus leaned forward, watching more carefully. A man in a suit emerged from the office, looking around nervously before heading to the elevator. Marcus recognized him, Daniel Whitmore, the CEO. He'd seen Whitmore many times during the day, always impeccably dressed, always projecting confidence and authority. But Whitmore being in the office at 1:30 a.m. wasn't particularly unusual. Executives worked late sometimes. Marcus made a note in his log and continued monitoring. 20 minutes later, the elevator returned to the 18th floor. Whitmore stepped out, but this time he wasn't alone. He was with a young girl, maybe 14 or 15 years old, wearing a school backpack and looking nervous. Marcus sat up straighter. Something about this felt wrong. He watched as Whitmore led the girl down the hallway toward his office. The girl's body language was all wrong. Hunched shoulders, reluctant steps, repeatedly looking at the floor. Whitmore had his hand on her back, guiding her forward in a way that seemed less friendly and more controlling. Marcus switched to camera 28, which covered the door to Whitmore's office. He watched them enter, the door closing behind them. Marcus's instincts, honed by 3 decades in security, were screaming, this wasn't right. A middle-aged CEO bringing a teenage girl to his office at 1:30 a.m. No, that wasn't normal. That wasn't innocent. He pulled up the sign-in log. Daniel Whitmore had signed in at 1:15 a.m., using his executive access card. No mention of bringing anyone with him. The girl hadn't signed in at all, meaning either she'd snuck in or Whitmore had deliberately not logged her entry. Marcus watched camera 28 for the next hour. The door to Whitmore's office didn't open. Whatever was happening in there was still happening. Marcus knew he had to do something. But what? Call the police and report what exactly? A CEO working late with someone in his office. They'd ask if anything illegal was happening. Marcus didn't know. He just knew something felt wrong. He made a decision. He'd go up there himself, knock on the door, do a security check, see what was happening. If it was innocent, he'd apologize for the interruption. Marcus grabbed his radio and flashlight and headed for the elevator. The 18th floor was silent, except for the hum of the HVAC system. Marcus walked down the carpeted hallway, his footsteps muffled, his heart pounding harder than it should be for a simple security check. He reached Whitmore's office, a large corner suite with Daniel Whitmore, CEO, on the door. Light showed under the door. Marcus could hear muffled voices inside. He knocked firmly. Security. Just doing a routine check. The voices stopped. There was a long pause, then shuffling sounds. Finally, the door opened. Daniel Whitmore stood there, his suit jacket off, his tie loosened, his face flushed with what looked like anger quickly masked as annoyance. "What is it?" Whitmore asked sharply. "I'm in the middle of important work." Marcus looked past him into the office. The girl was sitting on the couch, her backpack clutched to her chest, her eyes red like she'd been crying. "Sorry to bother you, Mr. Whitmore," Marcus said, keeping his voice professional. "I noticed on the cameras you had someone with you. Building policy requires all visitors to sign in at the security desk, even after hours." Whitmore's jaw tightened. "She's my daughter. I don't need to sign my own daughter in." Marcus looked at the girl again. She wasn't making eye contact. Her hands were shaking. "I see," Marcus said slowly. I'll need to verify that for my log. What's her name? That's none of your business, Whitmore snapped. I'm a CEO in this building. I pay your salary through the rent my company pays. I don't need to explain myself to a security guard. The contempt in Whitmore's voice was clear, but Marcus had been talked down to before. It didn't bother him. What bothered him was the girl's reaction to being called Whitmore's daughter, a slight shake of her head, so subtle most people would miss it. She wasn't his daughter. Sir, it's building policy, Marcus repeated. I need a name for my log. If she's your daughter, that's fine. I just need to document it. Whitmore stepped closer, using his height and position to intimidate. Listen to me very carefully. What I do in my office is none of your concern. I suggest you leave now before I call your supervisor and have you fired for harassment. Marcus didn't move. He looked at the girl. Miss, are you okay? Do you need any help? The girl's eyes met Marcus's for just a second, and in that second, Marcus saw pure terror. She's fine, Whitmore said quickly. We're fine. Now leave. That's an order. Marcus made a decision. Sir, I'm going to need to speak with the young lady privately. If everything's okay, there's no problem. But I need to verify she's here voluntarily. Absolutely not, Whitmore said. Get out, now, or I'm calling the police for trespassing and harassment. Call them, Marcus said calmly, pulling out his own phone. I'll call them too. Let's let Seattle PD sort this out. Whitmore's face went through several expressions. Anger, calculation, then forced calm. There's no need for that. You're overreacting. My daughter and I are just having a late-night talk. Teenage issues. Nothing concerning. Then you won't mind me verifying that with her, Marcus said, still calm but firm. Whitmore stared at Marcus, and Marcus stared back. 30 years of dealing with difficult people had taught Marcus not to be intimidated by wealth or position. Finally, Whitmore stepped aside. Fine, 5 minutes, but I'm reporting this to your supervisor. Marcus entered the office and approached the girl gently. Hi, I'm Marcus, building security. What's your name? The girl looked at Whitmore, then at Marcus. Lily, she whispered. Lily Chen. Lily, are you here voluntarily? Do you want to be here? Tears started running down Lily's face. I want to go home. Please, I want my mom. That was all Marcus needed to hear. He turned to Whitmore. Sir, I'm calling the police. Please don't leave this office. Whitmore's facade cracked completely. You have no idea what you're doing. Do you know who I am? I have lawyers. I have connections. You're just a security guard. No one will believe you. Maybe, Marcus said, pulling out his phone. But they'll believe the security cameras, and they'll believe Lily. Whitmore's face went pale. Seattle police arrived within 15 minutes. 3 patrol officers and a detective named Sarah Park, who specialized in crimes against children. Marcus had kept Whitmore and Lily in the office, though he'd positioned himself between them. Whitmore had tried twice to leave, but Marcus had blocked the door, not physically restraining him, which would be assault, but making it clear he'd have to push past Marcus to exit. I'm not detaining you, Marcus had told him. You're free to leave, but I'm standing here documenting everything with my radio recording until police arrive. Your choice. Whitmore had stayed, probably calculating that trying to leave would look worse. When Detective Park arrived, she took one look at the situation and immediately separated Lily from Whitmore, taking her to a different room for interview. Another detective interviewed Whitmore, who immediately demanded his lawyer and refused to answer questions. Detective Park interviewed Marcus in the hallway. Walk me through what you saw and why you came up here. Marcus explained everything. The camera footage of Whitmore arriving with Lily at 1:30 a.m., the girl's nervous body language, the fact she hadn't signed in, Whitmore's defensive reaction when questioned, Lily's plea to go home. You did the right thing, Park said. A lot of people would have walked away, not wanted to get involved, especially when dealing with someone powerful. You didn't do that. You trusted your instincts, and you acted. What happens now? Marcus asked. Now we investigate. We've got Lily in protective custody. We're getting a warrant to search Whitmore's office and his home. We're pulling all the security footage from tonight and previous nights, and we're going to figure out what the hell was happening here. Park looked at Marcus seriously. I need you to understand something. If this is what I think it is, you just saved that girl from a very bad situation, but you also just made a powerful enemy. Daniel Whitmore has money and connections. He's going to come after you. Are you prepared for that? Marcus didn't hesitate. I've got 30 years of clean service. I've got the security footage. I've got the truth. If he wants to come after me for protecting a kid, let him try. Over the next several hours, as police investigated, the full picture emerged. Lily Chen was 15 years old, a student at a nearby high school. She'd been reported missing by her mother 3 hours earlier when she hadn't come home from school. Lily told Detective Park that Whitmore had been grooming her for months. He'd approached her outside her school, pretending to be a talent scout for a modeling agency. He'd gained her trust gradually, giving her attention and compliments. Then he'd started asking her to meet him, at first in public places, then eventually in private. Tonight, he'd convinced her to come to his office, promising to show her a modeling portfolio he'd created for her. Once there, he'd assaulted her. She'd been trying to leave when Marcus knocked on the door.
If that security guard hadn't come, Lily told Detective Park, crying, I don't know what would have happened. I was so scared, I kept asking to go home, but he wouldn't let me leave. He said no one would believe me if I told. He said I'd come there voluntarily, so I'd get in trouble too. Detective Park's investigation revealed this wasn't the first time. Security footage going back months showed a pattern. Whitmore bringing young girls to his office late at night, at least 6 different girls over the past year. How did no one notice this before? Park asked Marcus. Marcus checked the logs. Different security guards worked different shifts. None of us saw enough instances to recognize a pattern. I saw it once tonight and it bothered me. But if I hadn't been paying attention, if I'd been doing something else when he came in with her, I would have missed it too. He felt sick thinking about it. How many times had girls been brought to that office while Marcus was on break, or making rounds, or distracted by other things? How many had security footage captured that no one had reviewed? Don't blame yourself, Park said. You saw it this time. You acted. That's what matters. But Marcus did blame himself, and he was determined to make sure it never happened again. Daniel Whitmore was arrested and charged with multiple counts of child sexual assault, kidnapping, and exploitation. The news exploded across Seattle. Prominent CEO arrested for serial predation of teenage girls. Whitmore's lawyers immediately launched an aggressive defense strategy, part of which involved trying to discredit Marcus. They claimed Marcus had overstepped his authority, had harassed Whitmore, had violated company policy by entering an executive's office without permission. Whitmore Financial Services, under pressure from board members horrified by the allegations, fired Whitmore and hired a crisis management team. That team recommended terminating Marcus as well, to demonstrate accountability and prevent future security protocol violations. Marcus was called to a meeting with building management and the security company that employed him. We're terminating your employment, his supervisor said. You violated protocol by entering a tenant's office without authorization. You created a liability situation for the company. We can't have security guards making independent judgments about what tenants are doing in their private offices. Marcus had expected this, but it still stung. I saved a kid's life. I stopped a serial predator. And you're firing me for it. We're firing you for violating company policy, the supervisor clarified. What happened with Mr. Whitmore is a police matter. What happened with you entering his office without proper authorization is a company policy matter. Marcus stood up. I've got 30 years of clean service. I've got the security footage showing I had reasonable cause for concern. I've got Detective Park's statement that I did the right thing. If you want to fire me, that's your choice. But I'm not going quietly. He walked out, knowing his career in private security was probably over. But he also knew he'd made the right choice. A 15-year-old girl was safe because he'd trusted his instincts and acted. That was worth more than any job. Detective Park's investigation uncovered a network far more extensive than anyone had initially realized. Whitmore hadn't been working alone. Security footage from multiple office buildings across Seattle showed Whitmore and 3 other men, all wealthy businessmen, meeting regularly. Park obtained warrants for their communications and found evidence of an organized ring sharing and exploiting underage girls. The men would groom vulnerable teenagers, often from poor families, broken homes, or unstable situations, promising them modeling opportunities, job connections, educational help. Then they'd exploit them, using threats and manipulation to keep them silent. This is an organized operation, Park told Marcus during a follow-up interview. They've been running it for at least 3 years, maybe longer. We've identified 16 victims so far, but we think there are more. Your intervention with Lily broke open the entire network. Over the next few weeks, 4 men were arrested. The case made national news. Wealthy executives running a predatory ring targeting vulnerable teens. The story dominated headlines for weeks. Marcus found himself thrust into an unwanted spotlight. Media wanted interviews. The story became Security Guard Hero Stops Predatory Ring. Marcus hated it. He wasn't a hero. He'd just done his job. He'd paid attention and acted on what he saw. But the publicity had one positive effect. It put pressure on Marcus's former employer. Public opinion strongly supported Marcus. Social media erupted with "Justice for Marcus" trending. People protested outside Pinnacle Tower, demanding Marcus be rehired. The security company, facing massive public relations backlash, reversed course. They offered Marcus his job back with a promotion and a raise. Marcus declined. I don't want to work for a company that fires people for doing the right thing, then only rehires them because of public pressure. I'll find something else. What he found was something better. The Seattle Police Department offered Marcus a position as a civilian trainer, teaching officers and security professionals how to recognize signs of trafficking, exploitation, and abuse through security camera monitoring. You have 3 decades of experience reading camera footage, Detective Park told him. You know what normal looks like, so you can spot when something's abnormal. That's a skill we need to teach others. Marcus accepted. His first training class was with 20 Seattle PD officers who worked in units that reviewed security footage as part of investigations. I'm not a detective, Marcus told them. I'm not trained in law enforcement, but I've spent 30 years watching people on security cameras. I've learned to recognize patterns, to trust my instincts when something looks off, to pay attention to details most people miss. He showed them the footage of Whitmore bringing Lily into the building, the footage that had started everything. "What do you see?" Marcus asked. Officers called out observations. "Man with a young girl. Late at night. Girl looks uncomfortable." "Good," Marcus said. "Now let me show you what I saw that made me go investigate." He played the footage again, pausing at key moments. "Look at her body language. Shoulders hunched, head down, clutching her backpack like it's a shield. Look at how he's guiding her, hand on her back, steering her forward. Not the body language of a father and daughter. Not the body language of willing accompaniment." He pointed to another detail. "See how she keeps looking at the exit? That's someone looking for escape routes. And here, watch when they get to the office door. She hesitates. He has to push her slightly to get her to go in. Those are red flags." Marcus taught the officers to look for body language mismatches, people who don't seem comfortable together, time of day anomalies, activities happening at odd hours, reluctant movement, someone being guided or pushed, fear responses, excessive checking of surroundings, flinching, control dynamics, one person clearly controlling another's movements, missing documentation, people entering buildings without proper sign-in. Most security camera footage is reviewed after a crime has been reported, Marcus explained. But sometimes, like in Whitmore's case, the cameras catch the crime in progress. If someone's monitoring in real time and knows what to look for, they can intervene. That's what happened with Lily. But it could happen more often, if more people were trained to recognize the signs. The training was so successful that it expanded. Marcus was asked to develop programs for private security companies, building management companies, hospital security departments, school security personnel, transportation security, airports, train stations, bus terminals. Human trafficking and exploitation often happen in plain sight, Marcus would tell training groups. Victims are moved through public spaces, airports, hotels, office buildings. They're visible on security cameras. But most people monitoring those cameras don't know what they're looking at. They see someone walking through a lobby and don't notice the fear, the control dynamics, the red flags. We need to train them to see what I saw with Lily.
As Whitmore's trial approached, Marcus was contacted by several of the other victims his intervention had helped identify. They wanted to meet him, to thank him. Marcus was hesitant. He didn't want to intrude on their healing process or make them relive trauma. But Detective Park encouraged him. They need to see that someone cared enough to notice, that someone acted. It's part of their recovery, knowing that not all adults failed them. He met with 5 of the victims and their families at a victim services center. The young women ranged from 14 to 17. All had similar stories, groomed by Whitmore or the other men arrested, manipulated into situations they couldn't escape, too scared and ashamed to tell anyone. One girl, 16-year-old Maria Rodriguez, spoke directly to Marcus. "I was in that building 3 times, 3 different nights over 2 months. Different security guards were working those nights. None of them noticed anything wrong, or if they did, they didn't care enough to check." She wiped tears from her face. "But you noticed. You cared. You came upstairs and you asked if I was okay. Lily was the last one. You stopped it before it could happen to anyone else. You gave us all justice by saving her." Another victim, 15-year-old Jasmine Taylor, said, "My mom keeps asking why I didn't tell her what was happening. I couldn't explain it, the shame, the fear, the manipulation. But you didn't need me to tell you. You saw it. You recognized it. That means everything. It means the adults in my life should have seen it too. It means it wasn't my fault for not speaking up. It was their fault for not paying attention." Lily Chen, who had been in Whitmore's office that night, approached Marcus last. "I've been in therapy since that night. My therapist says I have PTSD. I have nightmares. I'm scared of men I don't know. I can't go to the mall without panicking. But I'm alive. I'm getting help. My mom knows what happened, and she's supportive. I'm going to be okay eventually. And all of that is because you knocked on that door." She hugged Marcus, crying, "Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for not looking away. Thank you for being brave enough to knock on that door even though you were just a security guard and he was a powerful CEO. You saved my life, Mr. Johnson. You literally saved my life." Marcus, who had kept his emotions in check throughout his career, broke down. These young women had suffered trauma that would affect them for years, but they had survived. They had been rescued. They were getting help, and that was because he'd trusted his instincts and acted. Whitmore's trial was a media circus. His defense team tried everything, claiming the encounters were consensual, ignoring that minors cannot consent, attacking the victim's credibility, arguing that Whitmore was being unfairly targeted because of his wealth, suggesting the girls had ulterior motives. Marcus testified about what he'd seen that night, the camera footage, Lily's demeanor, Whitmore's defensive reaction, Lily's plea to go home. Whitmore's lawyer tried to discredit him during cross-examination. "Mr. Johnson, you were fired from your job for violating company policy, weren't you?" I was initially fired, yes. The decision was later reversed due to public pressure, but I chose not to return. So you have a grudge against Mr. Whitmore? This prosecution is convenient for you, isn't it? It justifies your decision to harass my client? I don't have a grudge, Marcus said calmly. I have security footage showing your client bringing a 15-year-old girl to his office at 1:30 a.m. I have that girl's statement that she wanted to go home and he wouldn't let her. I have testimony from multiple other victims about similar situations. This isn't about me. It's about what your client did to children. The lawyer tried another angle. You've built a second career on this case, haven't you? Training programs, speaking engagements, media attention. You're profiting from my client's situation. I'm teaching people to recognize signs of exploitation so other victims can be identified and helped. If you call that profiting, then yes, I guess I am, but I'd trade all of it to go back in time and notice the pattern months earlier before 16 girls were victimized. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. They found Daniel Whitmore guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to 45 years in prison. The other 3 men arrested in the network pleaded guilty in exchange for lighter sentences, providing testimony about the full scope of the operation. After the verdict, Lily's mother approached Marcus outside the courthouse. "Thank you," she said simply. "You gave me my daughter back. She's struggling, but she's here. She's alive. That's because of you." Marcus didn't know what to say except, "I'm glad I was paying attention that night." Marcus's training program attracted attention from the Department of Homeland Security. They invited him to Washington, D.C. to consult on a national initiative to train security professionals in recognizing human trafficking and exploitation. Human trafficking is a hidden crime, explained Agent Rachel Foster from DHS. Victims are moved through airports, train stations, hotels, office buildings, all places with security cameras and security personnel. But we're not training those personnel to recognize what trafficking looks like. You've developed a practical, effective training model. We want to scale it nationally. Over the next year, Marcus worked with federal agencies to develop comprehensive training that was implemented across TSA agents at airports, Amtrak security personnel, hotel security staff, convention center security, office building security companies, shopping mall security teams. The training included how to recognize trafficking indicators through camera footage, body language red flags, control dynamics between people, time of day anomalies, documentation gaps, how to safely intervene, protocols for contacting law enforcement, how to avoid alerting traffickers. Within 2 years of implementation, the program led to 134 trafficking victims, identified through security professional interventions, 89 arrests of traffickers, hundreds of additional reports to human trafficking hotlines, increased awareness among security professionals nationally. This is Marcus Johnson's legacy, Agent Foster said at a press conference announcing the program's success. One security guard who paid attention, trusted his instincts, and acted to protect a child. That action not only saved Lily Chen and helped expose a predatory network, it sparked a national movement to train security professionals to be more vigilant. Thousands of people are now watching with educated eyes for signs of exploitation. That's transformative. But success brought unexpected challenges. 3 years after the Whitmore case, Marcus's training program faced criticism from an unlikely source: privacy rights advocates. A coalition of civil liberties organizations argued that training security personnel to scrutinize people's behavior and report suspicious activities created a surveillance state mentality that disproportionately targeted minorities and marginalized communities. Marcus Johnson's program teaches security guards to watch for unusual behavior, said Amanda Price, spokesperson for Privacy Rights Alliance. But what's unusual is subjective. We've documented cases where security personnel trained in this program have harassed interracial couples, questioned same-sex partners traveling together, and reported immigrant families as suspicious based on racist assumptions about what trafficking looks like. The criticism hit Marcus hard. He'd never intended his training to promote profiling or discrimination, but he couldn't deny that some people were misapplying the concepts. He reviewed the reported incidents. There were indeed cases where security personnel had made judgments based on bias rather than actual indicators. An interracial couple questioned because security thought the Asian woman looked scared of the black man she was with. A same-sex couple with an adopted child stopped because security assumed child trafficking. An immigrant family reported as suspicious because the children were too quiet. A young woman traveling alone flagged as a potential victim simply because she was young and attractive. Marcus felt sick. His program was supposed to protect victims, not harass innocent people. He reached out to Privacy Rights Alliance and offered to work with them to address the problems. "You're right that there have been misapplications of the training," Marcus said at a meeting with their representatives. "That's on me. I need to do better at teaching people to recognize actual red flags versus making assumptions based on race, ethnicity, or appearance." Together, they revised the training to include explicit instruction on avoiding racial and ethnic profiling, case studies showing both appropriate and inappropriate application, emphasis on concrete behavioral indicators, not demographic assumptions, training on implicit bias and how it affects perception, clear guidelines on when to observe versus when to intervene, accountability measures for discriminatory reporting. Trafficking and exploitation are real problems that require vigilant observation, Marcus acknowledged in the revised training. But vigilance without wisdom becomes harassment. We need to recognize actual red flags, specific behaviors, obvious control dynamics, clear signs of distress, not make assumptions based on what people look like or who they're with. The refined training significantly reduced inappropriate reports while maintaining effectiveness at identifying actual trafficking situations. This is how progress works, Amanda Price said publicly after the changes were implemented. Someone creates something with good intentions. Problems emerge. Instead of getting defensive, they acknowledge the problems and work to fix them. That's what Marcus Johnson did. That's commendable. 5 years after the night he'd seen Lily on the security cameras, Marcus was invited to speak at a national conference on human trafficking prevention. The audience included law enforcement, social workers, victim advocates, and security professionals from across the country. Lily Chen was there. Now 20 years old, she was studying criminal justice in college and interning with a victim advocacy organization. 5 years ago, Lily told the audience when she was invited to speak, "I was 15 years old and trapped in the worst moment of my life. A man who had groomed me for months had taken me to his office and assaulted me. I was terrified. I wanted to go home. I kept asking to leave, but he wouldn't let me." She paused, composing herself. Then there was a knock on the door. Security. Just a routine check. The man who knocked, Marcus Johnson, could have accepted the situation at face value. A CEO working late with someone in his office, not his business. But he didn't do that. He looked closer. He noticed I was scared. He asked if I was okay. He insisted on talking to me privately. And when I said I wanted to go home, he called the police. Lily looked at Marcus, who was sitting in the front row. "Mr. Johnson saved my life that night, but he did more than that. The investigation his intervention sparked exposed an entire predatory network. 15 other victims were identified and helped. 4 predators were arrested and convicted. And the training program he developed has led to hundreds more victims being identified and rescued across the country." She addressed the audience. "I'm studying criminal justice because I want to work in victim advocacy. I want to help other survivors like me. And I can do that because one security guard paid attention and cared enough to act. That's the power of vigilance. That's the impact of refusing to look away." Marcus stood to speak. "Lily's too generous. I was just doing my job, or what should have been part of my job. Watching security cameras isn't just about catching criminals after crimes happen. It's about recognizing when crimes are happening in real time, so we can intervene." He clicked to a slide showing security camera footage. Every day, millions of people are captured on security cameras. Most are just going about their normal lives. But sometimes, hidden in that normalcy, are people in desperate situations. Victims being trafficked, children being exploited, people being coerced or controlled. And the only people who might notice are the ones watching the cameras. Marcus showed statistics from his training program. 500,000 security professionals trained, 47 trafficking victims identified through trained security personnel, 234 arrests of traffickers and exploiters, countless interventions that never made headlines but saved lives. "But here's what troubles me," Marcus continued. "For every victim we identify, how many do we miss? How many people pass through buildings, airports, train stations, every day suffering in silence, while security personnel watch camera feeds and don't recognize what they're seeing?" He paused. "My goal isn't just to train individuals, it's to change security culture, to make vigilance for human welfare as important as vigilance for property protection, to teach security professionals that part of securing a building is securing the people in it, especially the vulnerable ones." After the conference, Marcus was approached by dozens of security professionals with stories of interventions they'd made after completing his training. A hotel security guard who'd recognized a trafficking situation when a young woman checked in with an older man who controlled all her movements. An airport TSA agent who'd noticed a terrified teenager traveling with adults who weren't her parents and had no documentation of guardianship. A mall security officer who'd spotted a child being coached on what to say by an adult who seemed threatening rather than protective. "Each of you made a choice," Marcus told them. "You saw something concerning, and you acted. That's not extraordinary, that should be standard. But right now, it's not. Right now, most people see concerning situations and tell themselves it's not their business or they might be wrong. You didn't do that. You trusted your training and your instincts. That's what saves lives." Marcus realized his training was reaching security professionals, but what about the broader public? Ordinary people encountered potential trafficking and exploitation situations regularly, but had no training in recognizing or responding to them. He partnered with the Polaris Project, a leading anti-trafficking organization, to develop a public awareness campaign called See Something, Save Someone. The campaign taught ordinary citizens to recognize trafficking indicators in public spaces. Someone who seems fearful, anxious, or submissive. Someone who's not allowed to speak for themselves. Signs of physical abuse or malnourishment. Lack of personal belongings or identification. Someone who appears to be coached on what to say. Working excessively long hours in service industries. Living at their workplace. Multiple people living in cramped conditions. Children engaging in commercial sex acts. What to do? Don't confront potential traffickers directly. Don't attempt rescue yourself. Note details, descriptions, vehicle information, location. Call the National Human Trafficking Hotline, 1-888-373-7888. Call local law enforcement if there's immediate danger. Follow up to ensure your report was documented. The campaign launched with television PSAs, social media content, posters in public spaces, and training modules for community groups. Within the first year, the hotline reported a 34% increase in calls from the areas where the campaign was most active. Many callers specifically mentioned seeing Marcus's story or training materials and recognizing similar situations in their own communities. The campaign is working, said Jennifer Martinez, director of the Polaris Project. People are becoming aware that trafficking isn't just something that happens in movies or in other countries. It's happening in their neighborhoods, their workplaces, their communities, and they're learning they have the power to help. Marcus traveled extensively promoting the campaign. He spoke at community centers, Rotary clubs, churches, schools, anywhere people would listen. You don't need special training to save a life, he'd tell audiences. You just need to pay attention, to trust your instincts when something feels wrong, to make a phone call. That's all I did. I noticed something concerning on a security camera, and I made a phone call. That simple action led to a young woman being rescued and an entire network being exposed. Lily Chen graduated from college and started working full-time for a victim advocacy organization. She reached out to Marcus with an idea: create a network of trafficking survivors who had been rescued through security professional interventions. There are dozens of us now, Lily explained. People who were identified and helped because a security guard, a TSA agent, a hotel worker paid attention. We all have Marcus to thank, either directly like me, or indirectly through people who were trained by your program. I want to bring us together. They created the Vigilance Survivors Network, a support group and advocacy organization for trafficking victims who had been identified through security professional interventions. The network provided peer support from others with similar experiences, advocacy training for survivors who wanted to tell their stories, connections to services and resources, a platform to speak about the importance of vigilant security practices. The network grew to over 200 members across the country. Many became powerful advocates, sharing their stories at training sessions, conferences, and in media interviews. Marcus attended the network's first national gathering. Seeing 200 survivors, people who were alive and free because someone had paid attention, was overwhelming. One survivor, 22-year-old Amanda Torres, stood to speak. I was 17 when I was trafficked. For 6 months I was moved through airports, hotels, different cities. I saw hundreds of security cameras, hundreds of security personnel, hundreds of ordinary people, and not one noticed I needed help. Not one saw the fear in my eyes or the control my trafficker had over me. She paused. Until one TSA agent who had taken Mr. Johnson's training recognized the signs. He separated me from my trafficker, asked if I needed help, and called law enforcement. That agent saved my life. But he was only able to do that because Mr. Johnson had taught him what to look for. Amanda looked at Marcus. You created a ripple effect. You saved Lily directly. You trained the agent who saved me. You've trained thousands of others who've saved hundreds more. And all those people are now advocating and helping others. The ripple never stops. Marcus listened to story after story, each one different, but with the common thread of someone paying attention and acting. He felt the weight of both accomplishment and responsibility. The work had helped so many, but he knew there were still countless victims passing unnoticed through security cameras and public spaces every day. 6 years after the Whitmore case, Marcus was approached by a technology company developing AI-powered security camera systems. They wanted to create software that could recognize trafficking indicators automatically. We can program AI to recognize the behavioral patterns you teach humans to look for, explained Dr. James Park, the company's chief technology officer. Body language analysis, movement patterns, time of day anomalies, grouping behaviors. The AI can flag potential concerns for human review. Marcus was intrigued but cautious. AI can't replace human judgment. It might flag things that look suspicious but are innocent, and it might miss subtle cues that experienced security personnel would catch. Agreed, Dr. Park said. That's why we want you involved. We're not trying to replace human security personnel. We're trying to give them better tools.
The AI flags potential concerns. Humans review and make decisions. Think of it as a force multiplier. One security guard can effectively monitor many more camera feeds if the AI is doing initial screening. Marcus worked with the company for a year developing and testing the system. They trained the AI on thousands of hours of security footage, teaching it to recognize reluctant movement patterns, fear-based body language, control dynamics between individuals, time of day anomalies for specific activities, grouping patterns consistent with trafficking, documentation gaps and inconsistencies. The system was piloted at 5 major airports. Results were promising but imperfect. AI correctly flagged 78% of situations that human reviewers also identified as concerning. AI generated false positives about 23% of the time. AI missed about 12% of situations human reviewers caught. Combined AI screening plus human review caught 94% of concerning situations human reviewers caught. Combined AI screening plus human review caught 94% of concerning situations human reviewers caught. It's not perfect, Marcus acknowledged, but it's significantly better than having security personnel try to monitor dozens of camera feeds manually. The AI does the initial screening, flags potential concerns, and humans make the final judgment. That's a powerful combination. The technology was gradually implemented at airports, major hotels, convention centers, and transportation hubs across the country. In the first year, the AI-assisted monitoring system identified 89 potential trafficking situations that led to 34 confirmed rescues. Technology is a tool, not a solution, Marcus would emphasize when presenting the system. It can help us see patterns we might miss, but human judgment, human compassion, human willingness to act, those are still essential. The AI can't knock on a door like I did with Whitmore's office. It can't ask if someone's okay. It can't call the police. Humans have to do that. The technology just helps us know when and where to pay attention. Marcus's work caught the attention of international organizations fighting human trafficking globally. He was invited to present at a United Nations conference on trafficking prevention. Standing before delegates from over 100 countries, Marcus felt the weight of the moment. Human trafficking was a global crisis, an estimated 25 million people trapped in trafficking situations worldwide. I'm not an expert on international trafficking, Marcus began. I'm a security guard from Seattle who noticed something wrong on a camera feed. But what I learned from that experience applies everywhere. Trafficking often happens in plain sight. Victims pass through airports, train stations, border crossings, hotels. They're visible. They're on camera. But most people monitoring those cameras aren't trained to recognize what they're seeing. He presented his training model and the results it had achieved in the United States. Several countries expressed interest in adapting it for their contexts. Marcus worked with international partners to develop culturally appropriate versions of the training for European airports and train stations, Southeast Asian border crossings, Latin American bus terminals, African hotels and transportation hubs. Each adaptation required understanding local trafficking patterns, cultural contexts, and available resources for intervention. What worked in Seattle might need significant modification to work in Bangkok or Nairobi, but the core principles remained the same. Train people who monitor cameras to recognize concerning patterns, provide clear protocols for reporting and intervention, create systems that support both identification and victim protection, emphasize the importance of human judgment combined with systematic observation. Within 3 years, Marcus's adapted training programs were implemented in 23 countries. International law enforcement agencies reported 156 trafficking victims, identified through security professional interventions trained in Marcus's methods. This is proof that vigilance transcends borders, said Maria Santos, a trafficking prevention specialist with Interpol. A security guard in Seattle developed a training model that's now protecting people in Manila, Mexico City, and Johannesburg. That's the power of sharing knowledge and best practices internationally. But the constant focus on trafficking, the endless stories of victims, the knowledge of how many people were still suffering, it took a toll on Marcus. 8 years after the Whitmore case, Marcus found himself struggling with what his therapist called compassion fatigue and vicarious trauma. You've spent nearly a decade immersed in the darkest aspects of human behavior, Dr. Patricia Williams explained. You've heard hundreds of victim stories. You carry the weight of knowing that for every victim identified, there are dozens more still trapped. That's a heavy burden, Marcus. Marcus had trouble sleeping. He'd lie awake thinking about all the security footage he'd reviewed over 30 years. How many victims had he missed before he knew what to look for? He'd see Lily's terrified face in his dreams. Except sometimes it wasn't Lily, it was other victims he'd learned about through his work. He'd trained over 500,000 people, helped expose an international trafficking network, contributed to hundreds of rescues, but it never felt like enough. Every victim story he heard reminded him that the problem was so much bigger than his ability to address it. You're trying to solve a global crisis single-handedly, Dr. Williams told him. That's not possible. You need to accept that you can't save everyone. You need to celebrate what you have accomplished while accepting the limits of what one person can do. Marcus started setting boundaries. He reduced his travel schedule. He declined some speaking engagements. He spent more time with his family, his wife Cheryl, his adult children, his grandchildren. He started gardening, finding peace in growing things rather than constantly confronting the darkness of trafficking. Taking care of yourself isn't selfish, Cheryl told him during a particularly difficult week. You've given 8 years to this cause. You've made an enormous impact. But you can't help anyone if you burn yourself out completely. It's okay to take breaks. It's okay to have parts of your life that aren't about trafficking prevention. Gradually, Marcus learned to balance his advocacy work with self-care. He continued his training programs, but at a more sustainable pace. He stayed connected to the cause but created space for joy and rest in his life too. Marcus realized that sustaining the impact of his work required training the next generation of advocates and security professionals. He couldn't do this forever. He was in his early 60s now, and while he had energy and passion, he needed to ensure the work would continue after him. He developed a Train the Trainer program, teaching experienced security professionals and victim advocates to deliver his training themselves. He created comprehensive training materials, video courses, and certification programs so the work could scale without requiring his direct involvement in every training session. Lily Chen was one of the first people certified as a trainer. Now 25 and working as a victim advocate, she brought a unique perspective to the training, both as a survivor and as someone whose rescue had inspired the entire program. When I teach Marcus's training, Lily said, I show my own security camera footage. The night I was brought to Whitmore's office, I walk people through what Marcus saw that made him investigate. I explain what it felt like to be seen, to have someone notice I needed help. That personal perspective makes the training more powerful. Other survivors from the Vigilance Survivors Network also became certified trainers, creating a core of advocates who could speak from lived experience about why vigilant security practices matter. Marcus also partnered with universities to incorporate trafficking recognition into criminal justice and security management curricula. Students studying to become security professionals, law enforcement officers, or victim advocates learn these skills as part of their formal education. This has to become standard practice, not special training, Marcus explained to a group of professors developing curricula. Every security professional should graduate knowing how to recognize trafficking indicators. It should be as fundamental as knowing how to write an incident report or operate a radio. We need to normalize vigilance for human welfare as a core security function. Within 5 years, over 200 certified trainers were delivering Marcus's programs, and trafficking recognition was incorporated into security professional training programs at 89 colleges and universities. 10 years after the night he'd seen Lily on the security cameras, Marcus Johnson received the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian honor. Standing in the White House, Marcus felt overwhelmed as the president placed the medal around his neck. Marcus Johnson represents the power of ordinary citizens to create extraordinary change, the president said. A security guard who noticed something wrong, trusted his instincts, and acted to protect a child. That single action sparked a decade of work that has transformed security practices nationwide and internationally, leading to hundreds of trafficking victims being identified and rescued. The ceremony was attended by Lily Chen and dozens of other survivors whose rescues had been connected to Marcus's work, either directly or through security professionals he'd trained. After the ceremony, a reporter asked Marcus the inevitable question, how does it feel to be a national hero? Marcus shook his head. I'm not a hero. I'm a security guard who paid attention one night. The real heroes are the survivors. People like Lily who endured trauma and found the strength to rebuild their lives and help others. The real heroes are the thousands of security professionals who complete the training and then make the choice to actually use it, to pay attention, to intervene when they see something concerning. I just knocked on a door. They're doing the real work every single day.
Lily, standing nearby, interrupted. He's too modest. Yes, he knocked on a door, but that knock saved my life. And the training he created from that experience has saved hundreds more lives. And the culture shift he's inspired, making vigilance for human welfare a priority in security work that will save thousands more lives in the future. That's heroism, whether he wants to call it that or not. A research team from Columbia University conducted a comprehensive study of Marcus's program 10 years after its inception. The findings were staggering. Direct documented impact. 847 trafficking victims identified through interventions by security professionals trained in Marcus's methods, 312 arrests of traffickers and exploiters, 89 trafficking networks disrupted or dismantled, over 600,000 security professionals trained across the United States and 23 other countries, indirect unmeasured impact, ROHER, an estimated 2,000 to 5,000 additional victims potentially identified through interventions that weren't formally documented, deterrent effect on trafficking operations that avoided locations with trained security personnel, cultural shift in security industry toward viewing human welfare protection as core function, increased public awareness of trafficking through Marcus's public education campaigns, systemic changes, 34 states requiring trafficking recognition training for licensed security professionals, federal guidelines incorporating Marcus's methods into TSA and border security protocols, international adoption of training standards based on Marcus's model, integration of trafficking recognition into criminal justice and security management education. What Marcus Johnson created wasn't just a training program, said Dr. Rebecca Foster, lead researcher on the study. He created a paradigm shift in how we think about security. Before Marcus, security was primarily about property protection. After Marcus, there's growing recognition that security also means protecting vulnerable people. That's a fundamental transformation of an entire industry. On the 10th anniversary of the night he'd saved Lily, Marcus returned to Pinnacle Tower. The building had been renovated, and new management had invited him for a ceremony installing a plaque in the security office commemorating what had happened there. The plaque read, "On this site, Security Officer Marcus Johnson observed signs of human trafficking through careful monitoring of security cameras. His vigilance, instinct, and courage to act saved a life and sparked a movement that has protected hundreds of victims worldwide. May all who work in this space remember, security means protecting people, especially the vulnerable." Marcus stood in the security office, looking at the wall of camera monitors, the same setup he'd watched 10 years ago when he'd seen Whitmore bring Lily into the building. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd looked away that night?" the current head of security asked him. "If you'd been on break or distracted when they came in?" Marcus thought about that question a lot. "All the time. I think about how close Lily came to being just another victim no one noticed. I think about how many victims I missed in my 30 years before I learned what to look for. I think about how many are still being missed today by people who haven't been trained." He gestured to the monitors. "That's why this work matters. Every person watching these screens has the potential to be the one who notices, who sees what others miss, who has the courage to investigate and act, but only if they know what they're looking for, only if they understand that their job isn't just watching for criminals, it's watching for victims too." The current security team had all completed Marcus's training. They treated him with respect that made him uncomfortable. He was just a guy who'd done his job in his mind, but to them he represented what security work could be at its best: vigilant, compassionate, willing to act. Later that evening, Marcus met Lily for dinner. She was engaged now, planning a wedding, building a life that seemed impossible 10 years ago when she'd been trapped in Whitmore's office. "I've been thinking about that night a lot," Lily said, "specifically about the moment you knocked on the door. I heard that knock and I remember thinking, this is it, someone's here, maybe someone will help. But I'd thought that before and no one ever did, so I was scared to hope." She paused, emotional. "Then you asked if I was okay. You didn't accept Whitmore's answers. You insisted on talking to me. You believed me when I said I wanted to go home. Those simple things, noticing, asking, believing, they saved my life." Lily reached across the table and took Marcus's hand. "I know you struggle with feeling like you're not doing enough, like there are too many victims you can't help. But Marcus, you helped me. You created a system that helped hundreds more. You inspired a cultural shift that will help thousands in the future. That's not nothing, that's everything." Marcus smiled, tears in his eyes. "Thank you for trusting me that night, for having the courage to say you wanted to go home, for rebuilding your life and using your experience to help others. Watching you thrive has been one of the greatest joys of my life." 12 years after that pivotal night, Marcus Johnson, now 64 years old, stood before a graduating class of security management students at the University of Washington. "When I started in security 33 years ago," he began, "the job was simple. Watch the cameras, make your rounds, call the cops if something goes wrong. Keep the property safe, keep the peace, go home at the end of your shift." He paused, looking at the young faces eager to start their careers. 12 years ago, I learned that security means something more. It means protecting people, not just property. It means paying attention to the vulnerable, not just the threatening. It means recognizing that sometimes the most dangerous situations don't look dangerous. They look like a businessman working late with someone in his office. Marcus told Lily's story, the full version, with her permission, including the security footage that had started everything. "I noticed something concerning. I investigated. I acted. That's all I did. But that simple choice, to pay attention, to trust my instincts, to knock on a door, it changed everything. For Lily, for hundreds of other victims, for the security industry, for me." He looked at each student. "You're about to enter a profession where you'll have access to information most people don't have. You'll watch camera feeds. You'll see people in vulnerable moments. You'll witness behaviors and situations that others miss. The question is, what will you do with that access?" Marcus clicked to his final slide, a collage of photos showing survivors whose rescues had been connected to security professional interventions trained in his methods. Lily was there, along with dozens of others, all thriving, all building lives that had almost been stolen from them. These people are alive and free because security professionals paid attention, because they trusted their instincts, because they acted even when it was uncomfortable or risky. You have that same power. Every shift you work, every camera feed you monitor, every building you secure, you have opportunities to protect vulnerable people. He leaned forward, his voice passionate. Don't waste those opportunities. Don't look away when something feels wrong. Don't convince yourself it's not your business. Don't let fear of being wrong stop you from potentially being right. Pay attention. Trust your instincts. Act. Marcus's voice softened. I was just a security guard working an overnight shift. I wasn't special. I didn't have unique skills. I just noticed something concerning and made a phone call. That's all it takes. One person paying attention. One person caring enough to investigate. One person refusing to look away. He showed one final image, a recent photo of Lily at her advocacy organization, smiling, confident, helping other survivors. This is what's possible when we pay attention. This young woman was trapped, terrified, convinced her life was ending. Today she's thriving, helping others, building a beautiful future. That transformation happened because one security guard knocked on a door 12 years ago. Marcus looked at the graduating students one last time. Be the person who knocks. Be the one who notices. Be the one who acts. Because somewhere, in some building you'll secure, there might be another Lily. Another person desperately hoping someone will pay attention. Will you be the one who sees them? The auditorium erupted in applause. After the ceremony, dozens of students approached Marcus, asking questions, sharing their own stories about why they'd chosen security careers, committing to bringing his principles to their work. One student, a young woman named Sarah Kim, told him, "My aunt was trafficked when she was a teenager. No one noticed for months, even though she was moved through public spaces constantly. She eventually escaped, but it took years to heal. I'm going into security because of her, because I want to be someone who notices. Someone like you." Marcus hugged her. "Then you're already on the right path. The world needs more people who pay attention and care." That night, Marcus went home to Cheryl. They sat on their porch, looking at the stars, reflecting on a dozen years of work that had started with one security camera feed. "Do you think you've done enough?" Cheryl asked. "Can you finally rest?" Marcus thought about the question. The training program was established, being delivered by hundreds of certified trainers. The cultural shift in the security industry was underway. Hundreds of lives had been saved. Systems had been changed. "I don't know if enough is ever really achievable," Marcus admitted. "There are still victims out there, still people suffering, still security professionals who haven't been trained. But I've done what I can. I've built something that will continue beyond me. That has to be enough." He squeezed Cheryl's hand. "I'm proud of the work. I'm grateful I was paying attention that night 12 years ago. I'm honored that what started with Lily has grown into something that's helped so many others. But yes, I think it's time to step back, to let the next generation carry this forward." Marcus smiled. "Besides, I've got grandchildren who need their grandfather to actually be present at birthday parties instead of constantly traveling for training sessions. It's time for me to be a grandfather first and an advocate second." "Lily would approve," Cheryl said. "She's always said you gave her back her life. Maybe it's time to give yourself back yours." Marcus nodded. He'd spend the next few years gradually transitioning leadership of his programs to others. He'd still consult, still advise, still be available when needed. But he'd also garden, travel for pleasure instead of work, spend time with family, and find peace. He'd done what he'd set out to do 12 years ago. After that pivotal night, he'd transformed how security professionals thought about their role in protecting vulnerable people. He'd created systems that would continue saving lives long after he retired. That was legacy enough. Marcus pulled out his phone and sent a message to Lily. "Thank you for trusting me that night. Thank you for letting me share your story. Thank you for becoming an advocate yourself. Watching you thrive has been the honor of my life. I'm stepping back from the day-to-day work now. Time to let the next generation lead. But I'll always be watching, just like I was watching those cameras 12 years ago." Lily responded within minutes. "You taught me that paying attention saves lives. You taught thousands of others the same lesson. Now you've earned the right to rest. Thank you for everything, Marcus. For seeing me when no one else did. For knocking on that door. For changing my life and the lives of hundreds of others. Your legacy is secure. Now go enjoy your grandchildren." Marcus put his phone away and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, security guards were watching camera feeds. Some would see concerning situations tonight, and hopefully, thanks to the training and culture shift Marcus had helped create, they'd pay attention. They'd investigate. They'd act. The work would continue. Lives would be saved. The ripple that had started with one knocked door would keep spreading. That was enough. More than enough. That was everything. This story is dedicated to every security professional, TSA agent, hotel worker, and ordinary citizen who has ever noticed something wrong and had the courage to investigate and act. Your vigilance protects the vulnerable. Your willingness to pay attention saves lives. Thank you for not looking away.
Thank you very much for listening. Please let us know what you think of this story in the comments. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any other videos.